Good night, Antigua and Barbuda. Good night, everyone. Welcome to another Twin Island Media Live. Joining our company tonight are opposition senators Malaka Parker and Jonathan Wehner, and I believe also we'll have Senator Ashworth Azil joining us as well. Tonight we're going to get a debrief on yesterday's Senate sitting in the upper house of Parliament. And we're also going to speak on government's negotiations with the government of the our government's negotiations with the government of the United States regarding the country's acceptance of third country nationals as refugees. And last but by no means least, we're going to touch a little on the threats from the European Union to our visa-free access in the Schengen area. So those are all the areas we're covering tonight on Twin Island Media Live. A little heavy. We'll try and keep it as tight as possible, not to put you to sleep. I hope everybody had a fantastic day. Hope that all is well in your neck of the woods. Big news out to the United States where the Supreme Court upheld birthright citizenship. And I highlight that only because many of us, if not all of us in Antigua and Barbuda, either will be affected or could have been affected or know of someone, whether in our family or in our circle of friends, who would have been affected by this Supreme Court decision. So I think this is one of the increasingly rare occasions where the Supreme Court gets it right. And but I'm not a lawyer. There are individuals who are joining us on that, well, at least one individual that I'm aware of, maybe two, who are on with us tonight, who are in a better position to speak to the law than I am, but I'm just saying I think they made the right decision in this particular case. Anyway, before we get into the politics, I just want to say good night to our guests here on Twin Island Media. Good night, Senator Parker. Good night, Senator Wehner. How are y'all doing?
Did you get Ashworth?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me, Senator Parker?
Said he didn't answer the call.
Okay, that's fine. We'll make lemonade. Can both of you hear me? Hello? Oh dear. I don't know if they can hear me. I don't know if they can hear me. Senators Wehner and... Oh dear. I'm not sure if Senator Parker and Senator Wehner can hear us. I don't know. Let's try this again. Senator Wehner, Senator Parker, can you hear us? All right. Let's see. Senator Wehner, Senator Parker, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear now, Daren.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Senator Parker, can you hear me?
Okay.
It seems as though Senator Parker is not able to hear.
I will come back on his radio station. I'll take it back.
I'm sorry. I'm here.
Hi, you can hear me?
I'm hearing you now, yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you very much. All right. So did you hear my introduction?
No, it cut off. We probably
Oh,
heard.
it cut off.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. We're trying just to let our listeners know we're trying a different format or using Zoom to make the connection so that Senator Wehner is able to connect, because we've had some trouble with our new platform with him. So Senator Wehner is still hearing me?
Loud and clear, Daren.
And Senator Parker is still hearing me. So what I was saying earlier is that the United States Supreme Court made a decision that I think many of us were anticipating, or at least looking forward to, because many of us have friends and family in the United States who will be affected by the birthright citizenship decision, one way or the other. Because either ourselves were born in the United States and would have obtained citizenship through that being born there within the 50 states of the United States, or we have family who would have been affected. So I think most of us are in agreement with that decision of the Supreme Court. I don't know if any of you have any comment on that.
Jonathan?
Just to say that we're happy to have anything that would benefit our family, loved ones, and friends, and this is something that clearly benefits them. Just don't want to get into commenting on the local politics, if you will.
Yeah. No worries, we'll get into that just now. We're going to get into that just now. But before we get into the politics, let's look at the recent headlines in the United States, in Antigua and Barbuda. A woman left for dead by the side of the road with chop wounds to the head. There's a boy who was hospitalized with multiple stab wounds following an apparent kidnapping. There was also a cyclist who was injured in an early morning collision on Factory Road, and the gentleman who was allegedly responsible tried to abscond, but the police were able to get a hold of him before he left. An elderly man was attacked during a home invasion in Paradise View, and a young woman reportedly jumped over Devil's Bridge to her death. The police, of course, are still investigating that. Also, there have been a number of break-ins reported in various parts of Antigua and Barbuda in an apparent crime spree. Now, this list is by no means exhaustive, but it's just some of the news reports that have come through on my feed as a journalist, as a person who is in the news business. Between the 20th and the 23rd of June. As a citizen, these headlines over just those 3 days, it really rattled me. I don't know. I want to ask both of you. How do you all feel about when you all read headlines like this? As aspiring leaders? I'll let the lady go first.
Daren, I can add one to that. I don't know if I missed it, but I know that there was a news report about a near 70-year-old woman being raped in her home and having to fend off, the rapist in such a way. There's no doubt that what we're seeing is a trend in violence in our society, and not just our recent news, but even amongst our youth. And of course, this country would have erupted in that discussion about gangs and so on in our nation. So the trend towards violence, the trend towards a serious disregard for the other person, as you referenced, people being knocked down and even left for dead. We see that trend increasing. We see that our young people are increasingly at risk. And quite frankly, we're seeing a type of social decay. I don't like to speak in those, absolutes. Phone is ringing. I don't like to speak in absolutes because I'm such an optimistic person, and I know as well that everything is possible. Everything is always on the table for me. And so we're going to ask the logical question about the effectiveness of our policing. And that is what people will leap to first. For me, I see a social problem. And I know as well that people are under a lot of pressure in their own corridors of life. So I will be the first to say that it is a little bit more of a complex issue, that it does require some thought for us to properly resolve it. Okay? But the trending is there. It is very concerning. And the most concerning part is that I do not feel as though there are any policy changes, whether in the ranks of the police, or in our social systems, or certainly at a leadership level, that is moving to arrest these things. And that is how I would start.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Wehner?
Yes. Similar, or just as Senator Malaka would have expressed, I too am also very concerned with the increase in not just crime, but I would say violent crime. It is taking over Antigua and Barbuda. It's very sad to see our society in such a state.
You see, I'm compelled to stop Jonathan from saying it's taking over Antigua and Barbuda because I'm so sensitive to that type of language. And I refuse to accept that. It is not taking us over. And we will not allow it to take us over. Sorry to cut you, but
okay,
those are the aspects that I'm afraid of.
Well, the phrasing. Okay, no problem, no problem. that seems to be so rampant in
But
Antigua
it's
and
trending,
Barbuda.
yes.
Yes, trending, rampant language of that nature, if you will.
Yes.
And I said they're taking over as that's a phrase people just say from time to time. But
Right.
yes, what I want to be very point out, Daren, is that a lot of these crimes you would have mentioned, including a series of chain snatchings in broad daylight as well.
I forgot that.
Yes. A lot of
Yeah.
this has happened after the police force of Antigua and Barbuda the Royal Police Force would have announced that they're going to be implementing Operation Iron Grip. Now, that was supposed to be a program where the police is going to ramp up patrols, searches, stop and searches as well on the road, a bunch of different things, and just increase police presence across the island in an effort to stamp out or wipe out as much of this crime as possible to prevent any further uptick in criminal activity. Unfortunately, based on what you would have read thus far, it doesn't seem to be working to the full extent that we citizens and residents would want it to work. However, it's very important as well for us to say that policing does not start and end with the police force or the government. We as well must be our neighbor's keeper. We have to make sure we keep a lookout. We can't just ignore people who are living in our communities and villages. If it is we form neighborhood group, WhatsApp group chats, neighborhood watches, we look out and make sure everything is as they ought to be. And we can also assist in reporting things that are out of place, whether it be to our neighbors, our families, our friends, or if it escalates to that level to the police force. But additionally, we are taxpayers here in Antigua and Barbuda. It is the responsibility and the duty of the government, the primary responsibility and duty of the government to keep its citizens safe. And we hope, as an opposition, you never want to see, I shouldn't speak for all oppositions, but we don't want to see the government failing as it pertains to crime fighting in Antigua and Barbuda, because that affects everybody, Daren. Criminal activity.
So
I
let
could
me
be
say
robbed.
this.
I could be robbed, I could be attacked. So we want to see the government get it right, and we want to ensure that the police force of Antigua and Barbuda has all the necessary tools, equipment, resources, human or otherwise, all right? And also to ensure that they're following the proper procedures in terms of crime fighting. And that also relates to something we'd have addressed in Parliament with the amendment to the Magistrate Code of Procedure Act. But we'll get into that in a later time. But this is something I want to stress. We don't take any pleasure out of seeing an uptick in criminal activity or try to use it for political gain. We want the government to get it right. We want the police force to get it right. And we're just asking everyone as well to be a neighbor's keeper, to keep an eye out, and let's encourage one another to do the right thing. Because we might know people who might be struggling. Things are hard. Let's encourage them, look out for them, try to find employment for them in some way, shape, or form so they don't even feel the temptation, Daren, to engage themselves in criminal activity to make a living for themselves. And some criminals, I'm not making excuses for anybody. The point is, I just don't want anyone to be in that point of temptation where they think they can survive or they need to survive, so they turn to that lifestyle, Daren.
All right.
Let's move. I know that was an opening, but as Jonathan stated that, I want to say this. And he spoke a lot about the police force and equipping them and etc. But there was some time ago when I made a public statement and I said that the best way to beat crime is to stop it before it begins. And so I am one of those persons who believe that by the time we get to the police aspect and breaking stories, we are 5-10 steps behind. So we actually need to craft a national strategy around preventing crime before it starts. And that will include, education, sensitization. We have to have proper youth development initiatives at a community level within the schools. We have to have, be truthful about what we think and how we want to invest in rehabilitation services. We have to have anti-gang initiatives that are real, that are consistent, that are continuing, and not just have these, bursts and spurts and then a lull. Fighting crime is not just about the police, as I would have stated. I know we're not going to flesh this thing out tonight, but in my view, This is how I would like my government to approach crime. Because if we begin to put those things in place now, we will have a society that reaps the fruit within 5 to 10 years. But it is a seed that we plant, and it will continue to bear fruit. Okay, not that we're always trying to play catch up and we're not looking at the social issues that are the underlying issues for crime in societies.
Okay. Completely understand. Let's move quickly into the items on the agenda. Now, in the latest developments with respect to negotiations between the Antigua and Barbuda and the United States, they're active and ongoing, and the Antigua cabinet recently endorsed a counter-proposal to accept a maximum of 14 to 16 third country nationals annually, strictly rejecting the U.S. request to host up to 120 individuals. Just very quickly, in a summary, just days ago, Cabinet officially backed Prime Minister Gaston Brown's negotiating position. The United States initially proposed that we accept 120. I just mentioned that. And the Prime Minister himself recently described the U.S. diplomatic approach as akin to having a gun to a person's head, implying that while his government is willing to cooperate, they will not agree to terms that threaten national stability just to avoid U.S. veto. All right. There's some conditions that have been laid out. Individuals with 0 criminal records, right? That's one. A sovereign final say. The agreement must remain non-binding in a way that preserves Antigua and Barbuda's right to approve or deny every single individual case by case. Another one would be priority will be given to individuals who possess specific skills. And the United States is expected to provide financial support to assist with the resettlement and integration of those individuals. And a specific exclusion has been made, and this is in a broadcast just a couple of days ago. Prime Minister Brown explicitly stated that Antigua and Barbuda should not be expected to accept LGBTQ refugees, citing a recent case where St. Kitts and Nevis accepting 2 LGBTQ individuals. Brown argued that Antigua already has a sizable community and enough individuals indicating this demographic would likely be excluded from the intake. That's his position on it. All right. So my first question would be to Senator Parker. What is your understanding of the government's discussions with the United States? Anything different than what I've said? And has the public been told enough?
Well, the answer is no. The public has not been told enough. And in fact, the opposition's position is that the government ought to bring the MOU or MOA before Parliament for open discussion and assessment. Of course, we have said from the beginning that it is opaque what is happening, and they have given us this information in a drip feed, and all of that is contrary to how we think it should work. So the plain answer is no. We do not know enough, and the manner in which the information is coming to the public is totally unacceptable. It has been a level of confusion, inconsistency, and like I said, it lacks transparency. So Daren, we started apparently these discussions since August of last year. The country only found that out in January. And I take the position that when Gaston Brown says that we are negotiating with a gun to our heads, I actually feel, and I said so today, that it is he who has a gun to the heads of the people of this country because of the way in which he is doing it. So what you just laid out there as a potential platform for negotiating on our behalf sounds pretty okay. It sounds pretty decent as an okay starting point. I do not know if that is the first iteration of our conditions that we have laid down. I don't know if those conditions have progressed over these months, or this is the third or fourth. I don't know how we have arrived to this and what the likelihood of a US acceptance of those conditions are. But what we do have is the Marco Rubio on record stating very clearly that they are only interested in shipping to these countries the most despicable and worst of the criminals, which will include the pedophiles, the rapists, the murderers, etc. That is what the US agenda is. And if you look at what our government is saying and what they are intending to do, it is miles apart. It is miles apart. And so I think we need to see the MOU and we need to have a proper reporting, not cabinet coming out and endorsing its own actions or singing the prime minister's praises. That absolutely means nothing. To come to us and say cabinet is endorsing the prime minister's position on the negotiation means what? It means nothing to us. It means absolutely nothing to us. So the people of this country are having to rely solely on the word of Gaston Brown, which has changed over this period a number of times, and that is troubling.
All right. Senator Wehner, let me ask you, yesterday was your first presentation in Parliament?
Yes, it was.
How did it go? Let's start there. How did I'm giving an opportunity to respond to the question on the table on visa access, but I want you to tell us of your experience.
Well, for the first time, we had a marathon sitting yesterday, basically, because Senator Parker, we started, minutes to 10? Just a little bit after 9:30, I think it was. And we left there minutes to 9 in the evening, I believe we did. So, with a 1 hour break for lunch. Right. So basically, almost 12 hours.
I hope the lunch was good.
Sitting. Yes. This, we must give a compliment to the staff there at the Parliament building. But in terms of the matters before the House for consideration, there are quite a few matters. They're all important. I think the only one that was really procedural was the motion as it relates to accepting the throne speech from the Governor General. But all others, whether it be the Fatal Accidents Amendment Bill, Magistrates Code of Procedure, Immigration and Amnesty, the resolution for the House to approving the compulsory acquisition of a piece of property, and some others I'm sure I'm forgetting. So it was like 5 bills and 2 motions. The debate, for the most part, Daren, was, what should I say, cordial. It was robust. It was based on the issues and the substance from most members of the House. However, it was very unfortunate that as time went on, I guess, as she got more and more hungry or tired, whatever the case may have been, the leader of government business was very combative. And that's not something, if you are somebody who is an avid watcher of Senate debates, you would see that's just her personality. But she, as time went on, the debate went on throughout the day and the evening, she resorted to personal attacks, even when she was not recognizing the floor, in the crosstalk, as you will, Daren. And Senator Parker and Senator Azil were the main subjects of her attacks. So I did have to rise a few times on points of order. So that was very unusual for a new senator to be rising points of orders for the leader of government business. And he was out of order, Daren, quite a few times.
Yes, the president of the Senate sided with you on at least 2 of the points of order that I saw you raise.
Well, Daren, I don't raise frivolous points of orders, When I raise points of orders, what I was trained to do is to cite a specific rule that I'm referring to. So I don't just get up and talk off my head and say point of order. So that is something that is very important to do. But Senator Parker will tell you that leading government business is a test to one's spiritual growth and development. If you will,
I'm not going to have you say that about my friend. Anyway, listen. What are some of the biggest risks, Jonathan? Getting back to the question on the table with respect to third country nationals. What are some of the biggest risks, as you see it, for Antigua and Barbuda? You think about national security, immigration control, public services, or international reputation. Where do you see these risks fall down along those lines?
Everything, Daren. Senator Park would have mentioned an interview we had earlier today that it was very unusual. It is, because it's currently going on. It's very unusual for only the Prime Minister and, what is he, the resident ambassador? Ambassador, let me call him that. I don't know if he's a resident or, well, he's living there. So the resident ambassador to the United States, Sir Ronald Sanders, for only those two individuals to be quoted by the Prime Minister as the ones who are dealing with these negotiations. Now, that is very interesting, Daren. Why? Because you don't have the Minister of Foreign Affairs. That's up his lane. And Senator Parker also pointed out that that doesn't just exclude the Minister of Foreign Affairs. That's a whole ministry, Daren, with all the technicians, the capable people. That's what they go and study and qualified in these types of negotiations as diplomats and whatever else they may be. You exclude those individuals. You exclude, you would have mentioned the people in the Labor Department, because the Prime Minister specifically mentioned we want people with skills. So you want criminals with skills? Anyway, sorry, I'm going to go off track. You want criminals with skills is what you said, to put them into the workforce, because apparently there's full employment and there's a labor shortage. There's so much work and not enough workers. So we have to resort to bringing in non-nationals, which we've done already in terms of members, nationals of the Dominican Republic, and we're going to bring in criminals, apparently. So
to be fair to him, my read of what he said was that individuals should have 0 criminal records.
Daren, we went over this already. The Secretary of State was very clear in terms of who he's sending over. The Secretary of State is not sending over.
Do we have that? Do we have that clip? Mr. Technical Director, can you play Mr. Rubio? You have it loaded up? Because I, at first, like many people on social media, wondered if it was AI. Because I couldn't believe you were saying that with a straight face. Do we have that clip, Tech?
We can have that loaded up in just a moment.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Hopefully we'll play it for those who may not have heard it. But go ahead, Jonathan.
Yes, so the point I'm making is there's so many different areas in government, sectors in government, ministries, departments that have a vested interest in these negotiations, and they have been excluded. So this affects everyone. And I'm going to leave my other comments as it relates to what the Prime Minister said with the gun to his head, because the gun is not to his head, it's to, again, Senator Parker mentioned this, and he mentioned this in an early interview, it's to our heads. And I'll tell you why and the how after you finish playing the clip. If it's loaded up, you just let me know.
All right, let's see. We have it, Tech? All right, here's signal.
We're copying.
Okay, he's coming. Okay, let's go to the next question, though.
It's the machine gun. Before you get to the next question, Daren.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the issue of risk, you see, because I find it is dangerous to even juxtapose what the Prime Minister says to what Rubio says and all the gray areas in the middle in terms of who we could potentially be getting. So let us even err on the Prime Minister's side and believe that we will get exactly what our government is asking for, right? Which is non-criminals who are highly skilled and capable of being, acclimatized into our society in a meaningful way. Let us assume that's what we get. You know what the risk still would be for me, and what I think the greatest danger is? That this issue is such a critical one, and the way in which this government has handled it, because this matter touches on immigration, our border security, our national security, our international relations, etc. All of these things qualify for parliamentary oversight. And for me, the greatest risk is a long-term precedent that this government is callously setting, right? To say that something of this magnitude does not require parliamentary scrutiny and parliamentary oversight. That is a problem. So it means that future governments, even ours, because we will be the next government, right, could legitimately then and therefore rely on this bad precedent to say that we're not going to bring things to parliament that are sensitive to this nation, whether it's in immigration, defense, or anything else, or intelligence sharing, etc. Daren, that is a problem. It is a problem in a democracy. And That is a risk that cannot be erased, even if this government gets it right. That is a problem. And then we have the risk in terms of even the financial cost to this country. Even if we got the best and the brightest coming out of the US, what does that actually mean in cost to this developing country who is already not able to pay its bill and in debt of nearly 70% of our GDP? When you read that out and it says that the US says that they would give money, how much money? For how long?
No,
Is
that's a proposal being made by the government, all government.
Okay. Is it a one time? Is it a lump sum? Is it a staggered payment? How is the number arrived at proportionally? Is it based on the age and competency of the deportee? You know, if they're younger, we get more money. If they're older, we get more money because they're not going to be able to contribute to society. What does that mean? And, you know, the ordinary man and woman in Antigua have also asked critical questions. Where are they going to live? Who will house them? All right. What does it mean for our healthcare system, our education system, etc.? I know that we're now at about 1 deportee per month. Okay. So some people may think that we are just being alarmist, but the question is, how many years will this go on for? Do you know? Is this a short-term event? Will it be for 2 years or 5 or 10? So that potentially at the end of this agreement, we could have actually hundreds of people. And then the cost to this nation is certainly a consideration and a collateral damage. These are still risks, depending on, well, irregardless of who we get. And if we get in now to the bracket where we're going to get the people the Secretary of State wants us to get, then that is a whole different discussion.
Let's listen.
We are actively searching for other countries to take people from third countries. So we are actively, not just El Salvador, we are working with other countries to say, we want to send you some of the most despicable human beings to your countries. Will you do that as a favor to us? And the further away from America, the better, so they can't come back across the border. I'm not apologetic about it. We are doing that. The president was elected to keep America safe and to get rid of a bunch of perverts and pedophiles and child rapists out of our country. Here's something else we've done. We stopped giving student visas to people who are coming here to burn down our universities and take over libraries and harass people. Why are we giving student visas to people who are coming here to create disruption? And we've taken away the student visas of people that are coming here to do that. It's simple. If you're coming to America to start riots, we're not going to give you, we're going to take away your student visa.
All right. I think some of our listeners may have heard an echo there and might be hearing an echo when I speak. So we're working on this new hybrid platform, so bear with us. But Rubio has a lot of kahunas. I don't know. Your thoughts, Senator Wehner, what Mr. Rubio, Secretary of State, and some people say the next president of the United States had to say.
Well, Daren, in terms of how those comments affect us, now, if the case is, now Senator Parker would have spoken about the concerns and trepidations that one would have in the best case scenario, being the government, our government, the Prime Minister gets what he wants out of this negotiation. No criminals with people with skills. There's still are concerns in that scenario. Now, you just would have played the clip speaking about what the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, wants, and that would be worst case scenario for us. Now, let's address that very quickly. In that worst case scenario, Daren, we see a very powerful nation. Some would say the most powerful nation in the world is saying that they're going to send individuals to other countries. Now, of course, he said in the clip, as a favor to us, but we know how the United States operates. They don't normally come with their hands outstretched saying, could you please, please, please? It's normally more speak loudly and carry a big stick. And I know it's not speak loudly, but I changed it to say speak loudly and carry a big stick. That's how the US operates these days. However, if that is the case, it is very important, as Senator Parker said, for the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda to come before the people And the people, in our constitution, Daren, in our laws, the people in government are represented as it relates to deliberations and policy making and laws. They are represented not only in the judiciary through juries or judges, but also in the legislature to representatives. We live in a representative democracy, not a direct one. The direct democracy means that's what you have where all citizens and residents, they take part in the decision-making process. We don't have that. We elect representatives to go and speak on our behalf, not to represent their personal ideas and interests, to represent our ideas, our interests collectively as a constituency and a collection of constituencies being the nation. Now, in the absence of that, Daren, we do not live in a representative democracy. We live in a dictatorship, because that means our leaders are not adhering to those who gave them a job. Now, I would tell you what you should do with people who operate in that manner, but we had an opportunity to fix that. But I just want to move forward in terms of what we have today, Daren. This is a situation where the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda they have emergency sessions of Parliament all the time. If you can call an emergency session of Parliament, Daren, for one purpose, to seize private property, a vessel you claim was abandoned, but was manned by a full crew. You said the vessel was a danger to individuals and public property because there was a hurricane season coming and the vessel could be caught up in the waters, and all kind of foolishness was given for the seizure of the Alfa Nero. You even use international treaties.
The theft of the Alfa Nero.
Yes, you even use international treaties and agreements because around that time, Daren, remember, lest you forget, Russia invaded Ukraine, and there were certain sanctions placed on Russia, saying that assets seized, the assets of oligarchs could be seized. However, the proceeds for those assets were to go to Ukraine to aid in their war efforts. Where did the money for Alfa Nero go?
I think
but
there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a disclosure. I think essentially the money went to the government and the government used it to pay down on their debt. I don't remember the details of that. I didn't prepare specifically for that.
Jonathan, I don't remember that the international treaty or directive said to seize and sell. The thing was about a seizure. It was
correct, and even freezing of assets as well too.
Freeze on assets, right? Not even so much freeze.
Right.
Okay. But I don't know that any other country around the world did that or sold assets of Russian oligarchs. I know the discussion was, okay, if you're going to sell, why not give the proceeds to Ukraine? Who is there fighting the war? But that was not a directive at all.
To sell, right? And you're very much correct. But I want to land the point I'm making, Daren. The point I'm making is that you could call an emergency sitting of Parliament of the lower house, where members on the morning of the debate found a bill of such a complex nature and grave implications on the table. No opportunity to review it. Why can't you call an emergency sitting of Parliament for something this serious that will affect public safety? The gun is not, Daren, I put to you, to the head of the Prime Minister. The gun is the head of all Antiguans and Barbudans. Why is this? Because is it the Prime Minister who is going to be living in residential areas where these individual third country deportees, will he be living around them? I don't believe so. I know there's a mansion in Marble Hill being built.
A palace? What mansion?
A hotel. I correct myself. A hotel on Marble Hill.
Mansion.
That is passing off
the man does say
mansion.
I also know there is another palace up in a certain northern side of the island where somebody's currently residing in, and I don't expect any of these third country deportees to reside in that community. Where will they reside, Daren? They will reside amongst us, Daren, in your neighborhood, in my neighborhood, in Senator Parker's neighborhood. We, the common people, will have to deal, in the worst case scenario, living with the most despicable human beings. individuals who the Secretary of the United States, he said it is his objective, his mission, to send perverts, pedophiles, and child rapists to our country.
Let me flip the question.
The United States. And just let me conclude this, Daren. And the question is, this favor, what it relates to the termination of visa restrictions, whether it be visa bonds or the changing of terms when it comes to the granting or the issuance of new visas. What are we getting out of this? And all of we're asking can be answered if the people we employ, we elect, the people who ought to represent our ideas and interests, if they bring these important national issues that are pressing and urgent, even more urgent than Carnival, I'll put to you, Daren. So don't tell me no excuse about Carnival is coming up so Parliament can't meet. That is totally ridiculous. But the matters that we're talking about here, you don't want your children, your wife, Daren. I don't want my family living in communities where these perverts, pedophiles, and child rapists could be walking around. If we can't even hold down individuals who are charged with murder, as it relates to the Nigel Christian case, were you following that, Daren? Our police force has shown, unfortunately, its incompetent side. They are very competent individuals within the police force of Antigua and Barbuda, and there are many of them, but we also know there are bad apples. We do not want to create an environment where these despicable, most despicable human beings will be coming into our little two by four island and given free rein. If you compare the MOUs with Jamaica and Grenada, Daren, they cannot, according to those agreements, on the same issue of third country deportees, the Grenada and Jamaica cannot close those deportees into a little space on the island. You know, they have to be given international human rights standards have to be applied to them with freedom of movement and all these other things. So you can't say you're going to put them in a detention center in a work.
No.
In a work, so that's what they're coming here to do. They're coming here to move around as if.
So let's for the sake of
argument,
the United Progressive Party, if you were in government, election was just held. But I'm just humor me for a minute or entertain my question for a minute. What would the United Progressive Party do in the face of, as you admitted, the most powerful country in the world saying, take it or leave, this is what we want. We have the handle, you have the blade. It's a lot of pressure. We really don't have the upper hand in this situation, unfortunately. That's just a fact. Whether red is in power, blue is in power, or any other party color is in power. How would UPP deal with that situation? Senator Parker?
Daren, let me tell you why that question is a little false premise. And it is dangerous in the way you've structured it.
Okay.
First of all, as we have stated, which was the whole discussion here, we do not have all of the information. We actually don't. What we know, for example, is that our visas are being restricted because of the total abuse and the unlawful and illegal operation of the CIP. I know for certain that if UPP was in government, CIP wouldn't be a problem. That one I can speak to definitively. So that issue will be on the table, okay? So the question of visa restrictions for that issue will not arise. And quite frankly, if it arose for whatever reason, let us say the system itself of the CIP, that the issue is a systemic issue, right? And we would have also fallen foul of it. We have already stated that we are open to revising, improving the CIP, to actually operating it according to law, to look at the CIP more dynamically where we need to in terms of what these countries that we are granting visa-free access to through the sale of our passports are asking us to do. We have a government that has just totally ignored all of the red flags, all of the concerns of these countries. And that is irresponsible. But what we're seeing is that the CIP system has been so degraded in favor, right? Because there's a lot of unanswered questions. Let me put it that way. That whatever is so sweet in that pie, they are willing to risk the entire country to have the CIP continue to run the way it's run. So that's the first thing. I don't think we would suffer that fate. I hold a personal view that it is more than the CIP. I do believe that the issue of the Alpha Nero seizure is a contributing factor to why we have found ourselves afoul of the United States of America. And I know that it is public knowledge, because I think by now it is public knowledge that Yulia and Trump shares the same lawyer. These are people who are networked in particular ways. All right, you're dealing with a class of people at a certain level, okay? And their friends are powerful friends, all right? And she may very well, I don't think it's coincident, or I don't think we can ignore that very great coincidence of Yulia and Trump having the same attorney.
Martin DeLuca.
We can't. We cannot. So I know, well, I believe that the Alpha Nero is a contributing factor. And quite frankly, were the UPP to be in government, we would not have stolen the lady's boat and her artwork. And I can say that as a fact. So that as well would be off the table. And then there is the murky relationship that we have fostered over this government's term with the Chinese. Now, I always have to give the caveat here that the United Progressive Party expanded the relationship with the Chinese government while in office. So this is not an anti-Chinese sentiment. This is a pro-Antigua sentiment. Because when you look at the geopolitics throughout the world, and we know that these are the giants that are fighting, you're going to tell me that a little tiny island like ours, we're going to take up acres and acres and acres of land to give the biggest foe to the United States, I don't know, an enclave, which some believe is an intelligence gathering headquarters. The Chinese are more present in many of the Caribbean islands than they are here. And I don't know to this day what would have been the circumstances under which our governments were the one to grant that request. Malaka believes that those two issues can be added to that, as well as our other unclear relationships with other Chinese actors, like Yida and like our West Indies all Chinese friend, who also now became an agent for the sale of our passports. Do you see all of that? None of that would have happened with the UPP government. None, not one. So we would not be in that situation. But if we were, and we come back to the issue of the deportees now, and the gun to the head, and the disproportionate sovereign powers, I could tell you plainly that we are not anti-America. We are not anti-corporation as a party. And yes, we are pro-national security, but we are also pro-transparency, okay? So there are a number of ways that this would have unfolded, which would be totally different, Daren, than what obtains now. But I do believe that our discussions with the US would have had a totally different dynamic. Perhaps the gun, we would not have a gun to our head, because we won't have all of these other issues hanging over the discussion.
So I hear you, Senator Parker. If you notice, I'm limiting my discussion because I think the listeners are hearing an echo. We're trying to perfect this thing. But in the meantime, let me put this to you.
Clearly, if that means anything.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you, the other countries in the Caribbean that have suffered a similar fate, other countries have stated quite clearly, or their citizens have stated clearly, that they have not been the recipient of approved visas from the U.S. Embassy in Barbados and elsewhere. So the argument can be made Antigua is not alone. So that might.
Darren,
Sorry?
repeat.
Sorry?
Can
No,
you
other
repeat that?
countries are subject to the same restrictions.
Besides Dominica?
Besides Antigua. Well, yes, other countries have stated that their citizens are having trouble. I've heard people out of Grenada, I've heard people out of St. Kitts, I've heard people from other islands saying that they're having difficulty getting visas.
Okay. Well, there are always denial rates.
True. That is also
I don't
true.
know how we're
That is
making that
also
assessment. I don't know if it is proportionately greater than before, etc. These stories are just anecdotal. What I can say
Very good
is that
point.
I understand that in Jamaica, and I know that issue is an unfolding issue, but their foreign minister have stated that they would only be accepting deportees that are Jamaican. I've heard a similar thing being said by the Kittian government.
Okay.
All right. I cannot quote all of the Caribbean governments.
Okay.
All right. And I do not wish to misquote anyone.
Sure.
And I haven't seen their MOU either. And I'm not privy to their discussions. I can only tell you what the utterances have been. And what I have heard from at least 2 or 3 other Caribbean countries is that the deportees that they will be accepting will be their own country deportees from America.
Okay. Understood.
We don't have that option is not on the table for us at all.
Can we move into the visa-free issue into the Shenzhen region just very quickly because it's almost 9 o'clock. All right. The European Union has indeed issued a serious warning to Antigua and Barbuda and other Caribbean nations regarding the visa-free statuses. As of late June 2026, the situation is critical, with a potential deadline looming at the end of the year. And I'm just going to encapsulate a few of the points here. Prime Minister Gaston Brown has confirmed that the EU has threatened to withdraw visa-free access to the Shenzhen area for Antigua and Barbuda citizens, potentially as early as the end of 2026. The reason? The primary driver is the CIP program. All right. The EU views these golden passport schemes as a security risk, fearing that they allow individuals to bypass strict vetting procedures to enter Europe. The precedent of this is that it's not an isolated incident. Ireland has already revoked visa-free travel for Antiguan passport holders, from my information, and the EU appears ready to follow suit for the entire Shenzhen region. Now, the Prime Minister Gaston Brown declared on the 28th of June that Antigua and Barbuda will not dismantle the CBI program, i.e. the CIP program, even if visa-free access is revoked. He argues that the program is too critical to the nation's economy, projected to bring in $157 million this year. The government is seeking high-level meetings with EU officials to propose an alternative. They're arguing that the new ETIAS, or the Electronic Travel Authorization System, which pre-screens travelers before they fly, should be sufficient to satisfy European security concerns without requiring a full physical visa regime. The economic impact of why this matters: the major selling point of the CBI passport is global mobility, as of course we all know. Losing access to the Shenzhen area would significantly devalue the value of the passport for various investors. For regular Antiguan citizens, this would mean a return to the time-consuming and costly process of applying for Shenzhen visas for every trip to Europe, similar to what is required now for visas to the United States. So my first question is, if Antigua and Barbuda loses Shenzhen visa-free access by year-end, who should be held responsible for this? The EU with unfair pressure, or should it be the government? And the question about unfair pressure is not, to my mind, it's not an unfair one, because when you look throughout history, where they've come after our offshore banking, they've come after our online gambling. They've come after a number of other things. Of course, we know about sugar, we know about bananas, we know about rum. Generally, it seems as though whenever there are efforts to diversify, countries, developed countries, seem to come at us. So if you can answer the question, Senator Wehner, within that context, and I'm sure Senator Parker would like to have a go at that as well.
Thank you very much, Daren. Now, I cannot in good conscience, having said what I've been saying, feels like forever now, but for months, say anything about unfair pressure, coercion, gun to head, anything of that nature or sort as it relates to the European Union. The European Union, for years, Daren, the United States as well too, and the United Kingdom have been warning Antigua and Barbuda about its loose, opaque, corrupt CIP operations. Antigua and Barbuda. We have been issued warnings in reports. We have been, our programs have been flagged. Program has been flagged in human rights reports coming from the United States as well too. And Daren, I have spent time on a show, I believe I was on with Ambassador Max Hurst a while ago, a couple months ago, even before the election, months before the election, speaking about the EU warning us, but not even months before the election, this is last year because I have the article before me, that we could lose visa-free access. Now, Daren, I want to show you an article that I printed out for that interview last year. December 29th, 2025. This is from the Daily Observer. EU warns Caribbean CBI schemes could cause visa-free access. Now, Caribbean was not the entire Caribbean because not all Caribbean countries have a CBI program. There are specific countries that are warned. First on the list getting the warning was Antigua and Barbuda. And I quote from the article that we have to remind our people so we don't forget. In Antigua and Barbuda's case, I'm quoting, this is from the EU report. The report lists the volume of passports issued through investment to visa-required countries, naming Syria, Iraq, and China among the top nationalities recorded. Do you remember this interview, Daren, where I cited these things? This is from this 2025. I go over, I'm not going to take very long. I'm just going to do 3 or 4 articles. March 31st, 2021, 4 years prior to the article I just read, 6 years ago. 6 years ago. US cites citizenship by investment program in three Caribbean countries for lack of transparency. Daren, take a wild guess. Who you think was the first of the 3 countries to be mentioned in this report? Antigua and Barbuda. Now, it reads
it
as
might
follows.
have been alphabetical. They might have done it alphabetically.
By investment program in 3 Caribbean countries for lack of transparency in the latest human rights report released on Tuesday. So this will be in the week of the 31st of March, 2021. Yes, in the corruption and lack of transparency in government, that's the title of that section of the Human Rights Report section. The 2020 report identifies the CIP program in Antigua as citizens in Antigua and Barbuda as concerns over oversight and corruption due to lack of openness continue to mount. And it goes on and on and on to explain about the concerns of transparency and openness. In the interest of time, and that's to move on. It's showing you that it's been going on for quite a while. That was the US and EU. Let's go back to the EU again. August 9th, 2023. Another article, Daren. The UBP, what we are supporting, the UBP supports the European Union's CIP proposals, 2023, August 9th. This is another EU report where they didn't just warn us, Daren. They gave recommendations to implement, to avert any possible action because of our lack of transparency, our lack of openness. What were the recommendations, Daren? And I quote, the recent proposals made by the European Union aimed at reforming the citizenship by investment programs operated in Antigua and Barbuda as follows. The EU proposals included the mandatory submission of the names of those seeking citizenship to law enforcement agencies, lengthening the time required that applicants must stay on the island. We spoke about Antigua and Barbuda. Also, now those are the two proposals that the EU made. Now this is the UPP now. The UPP reiterated that an investigation into Antigua Airways is necessary to give additional assurance to the international community of our seriousness about policing our border, integrity in our immigration and the CBI programs, and also bolstering our immigration security. I paused there because I mentioned proposals from the EU, and I would have spent time again, Daren, on this same platform, Twin Island Media, I believe perhaps in that same interview as well too, citing the total removals of the legal guardrail by Gaston Brown. Two of those proposals by the EU directly affect changes in the law by Gaston Brown himself as minister responsible for the Citizenship by Investment Unit, because it was Gaston Brown in 2016 who reduced the residency requirement, the amount of time required for you to spend in Antigua and Barbuda before an applicant can qualify, from 35 days to 5 days. Now, when the original was passed in 2013, individuals who were concerned about our nation, like Senator Parker, would have even had concerns about 35 days, saying that it's so small. How could you have, at a point in time where people are saying 35 days is so short, but the Prime Minister says that's too large, that's too long, sorry. So we're going to cut it down to 5. And the EU flag.
Let me ask you, has that not been addressed in Parliament?
Daren, that was addressed years after complaints were made and the damage was already done. People already got our passports.
Right.
The second issue that they mentioned, Jonathan and Daren, that when they found transparency as one of the key issues. Yes, the issue of residency and actual familiarity with the nation is there. But I think that their greatest issues were around transparency, functionally.
And that's exactly where I'm coming to.
Exactly.
So that's the last point I was just about to end on there, and if you'd allow me, because that starts off with the second proposal the EU made with sending them their names. And remember, I'm an interview at the time, Ambassador Hurst said, but we already sent them their names, what they're complaining about. I just don't understand these people. The EU is saying we want their names, but you're going to tell them they're lying, they don't have names? That's one. Another area with transparency, Daren, we don't know who our CIP agents are. So for example, and we don't know who they sell our passports to, and we don't know where the money goes when our passport is sold. Case in point, Yida was given the right to be our sole CIP agent in the whole of China. That's over 1 billion people, Daren. Yida, in the original Licensing Agreement Act to operate that special economic zone, not only was he given the right to be our only CIP agent, our Antigua and Barbuda in China, he was given the right to keep the proceeds of the sale of those passports. Let that sink in. Also, there was no reporting ever in any of the reports coming out of the CIU detailing who were the individuals who received those passports, or how many passports, how many passports were sold by Yida in China. No clue. You think we're the only ones who pay attention to that?
And that is not unlike how government itself treats its own sale. Because I thought what Jonathan would highlight is the fact that they don't even give us the names.
Nope.
Right? Which was a requirement in the act that UPP left there for publishing of the names to Parliament for transparency and oversight.
And the Gazette.
Right? And to be gazetted, etc. They have deliberately stripped out all of that. But let me just jump in here and say this. The Prime Minister deciding that his lazy money that they're getting from the CIP, lazy money, okay, is more important than the country, the people of the country having visa-free access to these countries. Okay, to me, it's treasonable. It is high treason. He is making
that's a strong charge.
What I am quite sure that if we surveyed this country, that the people of this country, would choose to have visa-free access to Europe and to the US, because these having access to these countries is not just for vacation purposes, which we should have the right to take and to exploit. But there are many lives in this country that are tied to having access to these places. Okay, whether it is for medical attention, for schooling, because family members are there. I've spoken to people in my constituency who have property in the US, who have had built homes in the US, who are no longer able to access them. These are real things that the Prime Minister is just discarding. Let me also that to
finish
me,
your point.
it highlights this government's lack of ingenuity, innovation, creativity, and competence to run this country in a fiscally prudent manner. No serious country can build its future on selling citizenship. You can't do it. And when we looked at this bill, and even in my objection to it, it was always intended and would have to be a temporary mechanism. It was not sustainable. So Gaston Brown coming to make the case that he's not giving up the CIP because we're depending on it is a reason for him to be fired. And it shows us that he lacks the competency to govern this country. For 12 years, they have not diversified the economy. They have not structurally altered the economy of this nation. They have not done any of the things to sustainably secure fiscal stability in this nation, whether it is modernizing our tax administration systems or looking for diversity in exports, new industries or sectors, etc., whether it is investing in entrepreneurship and startups so that we can actually get the engines of the economy turning. They haven't done any of that because CIP provides what I called from the beginning lazy money. And that is always a risk to a nation.
Let me ask you, Senator Parker. Permit me to interject here. You used the term of treason. Now, when I think of treason, it's a high bar. Usually, it comes with certain consequences. Do you think that the Prime Minister? Do you think that that's a fair word to use in this particular situation? Given the circumstances that you've just described, you think the government's approach is wrong. I understand everything that has been said tonight, but to suggest that it is treasonous, you don't think that that's harsh?
It's not a fair word. It is theater, and it is to illustrate how serious I think it is. But it is not a fair word because it would not meet the classic definition of treason. But let me tell you how my brain arrived at that. Here we are. And when you reach the high bar of treason, as you rightfully said, which is usually a serious betrayal of the state, and it's the interest of the state and the people. I consider this to be that. I know it's not to that extreme, but here we are where the government is saying that they prefer to keep this. And by the way, now, this is a redundant issue now, because if Europe and Schengen revoke their visa-free access, what passport are we selling? Who are we selling it to? Because that is the selling feature of the passport.
Exactly.
We lost Canada, we lost the US, and now if we lose Schengen, right? What would be the attraction for Antigua passport? CIP, as we know it, would come to a crushing end unless there are now new reasons why, or to the class of people that they're selling intentionally that want to have the passport for another reason. So let me make that point. But for him to insist, for him to not take the necessary measures, which I find are reasonable and rational, what they're asking us to do, and to give this country the false choice of him continuing to reap lazy money from CIP or have the people's visa-free access revoked, I think is a betrayal of the people and a betrayal of the state. I can match that further and say the fact that we are now having our national security threatened, our immigration at risk, our border security at risk, etc., by forcibly having to take deportees, all right, means that that is exactly what they have done. And they have put the interest of the state secondary. now we're having to contend with these things, Daren. So I agree that the word treason, in the true sense and in the classical meaning of it, okay, it may not meet that threshold, but I'm saying it to illustrate how grave a position they've put us in, and what I find to be a betrayal, because they have continued to do it intentionally.
Senator Parker and Wehner, or Senators Parker and Wehner, we just came out of an election. There were many individuals who thought that people might have reacted to this visa situation and voted accordingly, i.e., against the government. But the campaign was prosecuted by both parties, and the people of this country collectively, by action or inaction, voted, and the result was that Gaston Brown and the Labour Party remained in power and will be in office for another 5-year term. Whether he goes the full term or not is beside the point. Why do you think the UPP was not able to convince enough people to vote for its message that, hey, all these things are too many things are going wrong in our country, and the issues you just highlighted, which I know affect many, and many people are concerned about. Where do you think the party failed in prosecuting that message?
Sorry for interrupting, Daren. I just wanted to jump in because I will be brief on that question, okay?
Yeah.
As I stated during this election campaign, snap elections are never about the people. Never. It's never about the issues. It's never about government bringing its record before the people. And the people of this country were, in fact, caught off guard. It was a totally strategic move. It had nothing to do with all of the ingredients that should form and shape how a country is choosing its government. So that's the first thing. The way in which the election were held, rushed. It is also true that our people are facing real day-to-day issues. And this election became about personal needs, right? And suffering. There are a lot of people who are vulnerable, who are financially in need of support. And that is what this election was about. Where did you see us discussing issues? Lastly, I would say to you that this visa access or visa-free access issue, to me, became a foreign discussion to many persons. We haven't done, I don't know if we ever asked a question in the census as to how many people have visa, but I know that Antiguans appear to be one of the more traveled people in the region. Antiguans seem to travel a lot and go, many different places. But to be able to translate the lack of visa-free access to an everyday reality required time and discussion. And I don't think that those issues resonated amidst the real cost of living and other issues which people were contending with.
All right. Point understood. Now, final question, because we have to wrap. It's 60 minutes after 9 o'clock. If the EU follows Ireland and imposes visa restrictions, does the opposition have a plan to deal with the fallout? I mean, how are we going to deal with that? Has the opposition discussed a strategy of how it's going to respond to any such decisions? Because the end of the year is coming up pretty fast. Senator Wehner?
Ireland imposed visa-free restriction on Antigua.
I'll verify that. But
to the nation.
That's my information.
When did that happen?
Let me confirm that.
That was stated by the Prime Minister. We haven't had any official communication, from my understanding, to say that. It's just stated by the Prime Minister.
I heard an utterance on Point FM, and I thought it was a misstatement because I know that Ireland did impose visa-free restrictions on, was it St. Lucia?
Okay. Yeah, you're correct.
I remember
The island does not currently impose visa restrictions on citizens of Antigua and Barbuda. Antiguan passport holders are classified under visa and non-visa required nationalities and can travel to Ireland visa-free for short-term stays, while Irish citizens enjoy the same privilege when visiting Antigua and Barbuda. So I stand corrected on that. While Ireland has previously updated its visa policies regarding other Caribbean nations with CBI programs, Antigua and Barbuda remains on the exempt list, meaning no prearranged visa or visit Ireland travel path special authorization is required to board your flight. So I stand corrected on that one. Thanks for that.
Very good.
Mm.
You can
All right.
rephrase the question. I'll let Jonathan.
But the issue is still, the point is the Shenzhen region is threatening to impose visa restrictions. And so the question is, how is UPP planning on addressing that? And that'll be the last question on this issue.
As Senator Parker would have very well put it, right, earlier on a different issue as relates to deportees, we do not have the information before us that we need. I couldn't even tell you what at this point in time the EU is mandating happens for us not to have these restrictions. I have no clue. We have no clue. This country of Antigua and Barbuda has no clue whatsoever, other than the arbitrary mention by the Prime Minister that our CBI program is being called out. And I don't take his word for anything, Daren. Nothing. Okay, you understand me? So him saying that the CBI program is mentioned, for all you know, that's one of the 10 things that have been mentioned. You don't know. We have no clue what is being mandated, what is being proposed, what is being stated by the European Union. Just like we have no clue what is being mandated, stated, or proposed by the United States of America as relates to these third-party nationals. So for us as an opposition, for us as public officials to commit to say, we will do this in this situation, it is total folly. Total folly. That's like you're going to sit down to play chess, Daren. You're going to say, what move would you make? What would be your 33rd move in a chess game? What? I have no clue what the other 32 before that. But you want to tell you what would be my 33rd move in a chess game? That is a total. It would be utter foolishness for us to commit ourselves to saying what the 33rd move would be if we don't even have a clue as to what our 31st 32 moves were, much less the opposition's first 32 moves were. I hope the point is made, Daren. We cannot reasonably answer those questions. What I can say, as Senator Parker would have said before, the CIP would not have been an issue on the UPP because the same laws that were changed by Gaston Brown in 2016 and subsequent years were the laws implemented by UPP. And as I read from the EU report and the following, the corresponding news articles from the Daily Observer, what they were recommending to us years ago that we implement were the laws that existed on the UPP's time. That they weren't good enough. And additionally, in conclusion, Daren, I also heard, because sometimes, you know, as acting peer, I have to force myself. This is one of the punishments of the job, to listen to Point FM every once in a while. And I have to listen to the diatribe and the really horrible rhetoric down there ever so often. The Prime Minister has now come to say, Daren, Saturday, and I think the Saturday before as well too, that perhaps one of the things, this was after the OECS, especially after the OECS authority meeting, Daren, I don't know if you remember that.
Recently, yes.
The OECS is saying they want to have a regional regulatory body for our CBI programs, and that they should look into getting somebody from the United States or Canada or the EU to run the regulatory body or even the CBI program itself. I had to hold my head and say, what? Because the Prime Minister criticized, as leader of the opposition, and the Prime Minister subsequently after, the UPP government. Because under the UPP, that's what we had in place. We had, I think it was a Canadian national who was running the CIB program here in Antigua and Barbuda. And the Prime Minister said, oh, well, we don't value our local people. Oh, we don't think we are capable of anything. And we're just looking for overseas people and this and that and give the value Antiguans and Barbudans. They have no vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. Because the Bowen Spence administration knew, Daren, that to preserve the transparency and integrity, the trust and confidence of these countries, and the cooperation in the program, they had to make concessions to show that we are willing to bolster and maintain the integrity and collaboration and cooperation. And that is why we had individuals from other countries who were now falling into issues with, because remember I said Canada removed their visa-free
early.
a long time ago, since 2017, 2018. The EU is now threatening end the year, has been threatening restrictions for over 6 years, as I cited reports in the article. Since 2021, the United States issued a human rights report talking about our lack of transparency and lawlessness when it comes to the CIP. So there's no way the Prime Minister can act surprised, behave as if he's a victim when he is the biggest, or because he's black. Right. Or and as if he's some kind of victim. He is the biggest perpetrator of his philosophy of self-enrichment. And I have explained how that happens, especially on the CBI program in Antigua and Barbuda. And we the people are going to pay with our loss of visa-free access for mansions or palaces or hotels on certain hills.
That's implying some things that we have to be careful with. Miss Parker, Senator Parker, you already know the Prime Minister is quick to say he's going to his lawyer to talk, right? So we don't want to encourage him any further. And we won't even go there tonight because I promised I wouldn't, well, let me put it this way. I promised myself I wouldn't bring up that issue. But I will say, and I'm referring to the issue with the back and forth with you and him and the whole story. There are individuals who work at the CIP who will tell you that they do their best to operate a program of integrity and that they do have companies and entities overseas, various countries, that provide them with due diligence information to do their best to ensure that anyone obtaining a passport is above board and is not on any red list anywhere.
Disclaimer, I want to agree with you. I want to let the country knows that the head of the CIP, I have a lot of respect for her, that female, but I want to also let you know, Daren, one of the statistics that Jonathan failed to mention, and which I will mention now, is that we grant passports at a rate of 98%, okay? Which means we're denying 2% of people who apply. These are the things that were also in the report. So what does that mean? That we have hundreds of people applying for our passports annually, and it's just all of them are just good. They just only the good people who are above board and who will pass the due diligence process gain our passport. That is red flagged, because any system where you have applicants of a certain amount, particularly over a length of time, and you don't see a denial rate that looks as though that you're really sifting people, it's going to raise alarms. And that is what has happened here. So I have no doubt that there are well-intentioned people at the CIP unit, okay, and that they believe fully that what they are doing is correct. But we are saying, and we are also echoing what the international agencies are saying, that there is great suspicion in any system where 98% of the people who apply are granted what they ask for.
Where did you get that figure from? Very quickly. 98%? Which report was that? Which report was that? The 98%. Where did that figure come from?
Hello?
Okay.
John,
I think...
Are you hearing?
No, yeah, I don't think y'all are hearing me. You hearing me now?
I'm going to ask you after we've wrapped up to send piece of information to Daren.
Oh, it's the rejection?
Yes, great.
That's been going on for how many years now? That's well known. Anyway, Daren, we have a whole program for CIP. You give me time and I will give you everything you need to CIP.
I'm pretty sure. Listen, we have to go now. It's approaching 9:30. I want to thank Senators Wehner and Parker for joining me this evening. Thank you so much, viewers and listeners, for joining us on the Twin Island Live tonight. We tend to have a lot of our people watch the recording overnight and into the morning, so we'll try and see if we can package it in such a way that the main elements can get out there so that individuals can hear the message from the United Progressive Party. And of course, we'll give an opportunity to the opposite side to say what they have to say in response. So thank you very much. Lady and gent, I appreciate it. Have a good night. And thanks for joining Twin Island Media Live.
You as well, Daren. Good night.
And thank you for your public service. Anybody who puts themselves up for public office, do God bless you. All right? All right. Take care.
I'm here
That
for
does it.
you.
What's that? Sorry? Oh, I missed that. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. Mm-hmm.